Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito is facing even more scrutiny now over some stock trades related to the right-wing culture wars. Now, the justice had sold shares of beer giant Anheuser-Busch InBev right as conservatives were boycotting Bud Light over his partnership with transgender social media influencer Dylan Mulvaney. So this was over one can with her face on it, and the entire right wing completely melted down, okay, over all this. So now, during this, Alito sold between $1,000 and $15,000 of AB InBev stock on August 14th, 2023, according to a financial disclosure filing for the justice that was recently made visible through a federal judicial database. Now, on the same day that Alito sold Anheuser-Busch, he bought the same amount of stock in Molson Coors. So it's not like, oh, I no longer want to invest in beer. No, he's like, I want to invest in beer. I just don't want to invest in the trans beer. Interesting. Interesting how that works, okay? Not a coincidence. I think it's pretty clear this is him putting his money where his political beliefs are. That's not a good look, all right? Why? Because members of the Supreme Court are supposed to be nonpartisan, non-biased. This guy has a clear bias against transgender people if he's paying attention and using his financial assets to push the culture wars, okay? And to make it worse, Alito's switch to Coors is in light of the company's history of facing boycotts from Mexican Americans, African Americans, as well as the LGBTQ community over workplace practices. In fact, Coors had actually in the 70s been a target of a famous boycott called the Coors Gay Bar boycott. So now, what happened is the Coors family is very conservative, and they were funding anti-gay organizations. They're also using discriminatory hiring practices, and so LGBTQ plus activists, along with people like Harvey Milk, for example, they got together with the labor unions, like the Teamsters. And so this is where labor unions, you know, I mean, they got together and they did solidarity, and they used their base in order to help push for social justice. It's awesome. So they went after Coors and they urged bars to stop, you know, selling it until Coors changed those practices. And it worked. And it worked. And so, look, you could argue that, look, he was just pulling his investments because he thought he might lose money from this, you know, because of the boycott. But how would he know unless he was paying attention to the boycott itself? Okay? And look, this was broadcast all over Fox News, all over right-wing media. They were obsessed with the boycott of Bud Light. Okay, you didn't see much of it other on the left, except for reaction to like, oh, look what the chuds are doing. They're boycotting Bud Light for some reason. Oh, that was weird, you know. But they were absolutely obsessed with it, and so this shows you exactly the kind of media that Samuel Alito consumes. He was paying attention to it. Now, aside from the investment activities, Alito is also being criticized over a New York Times report of an upside-down U.S. flag being hung in his yard. Now, that's a symbol used by supporters of the Stop the Steal conspiracy that was flown at his home in the days following January 6th. So, the timing, not a coincidence here. Now, Alito, when questioned about it, he's like, oh, no, it's my wife. Oh, yeah, throw the missus under the bus. That's very, very classy of you. But this, I don't know if you can blame the wife on this one, all right? Perhaps you can blame your broker, but like, come on. The sale, the timing here, very suspicious, all right? In fact, Gabe Roth, executive director of judicial watchdog group Fix the Court, said this can all be construed as Alito making a political statement. Roth further said, I believe Supreme Court justices should refrain from making political statements, even oblique ones, or even their wife or broker may have made on their property or in their brokerage accounts. Roth noted the beer companies in question have no pending business before the Supreme Court, that he could think of, which again would clearly put him or his broker as responding to, where they get their media and showing where they are on the political spectrum, which is what you shouldn't, as a Supreme Court justice, do. Okay, you have to remain neutral. You have to remain nonpartisan, non-biased, and your only guiding principle should be the U.S. Constitution. That's it. Clearly, this is not the case when it comes to Alito. In fact, Roth said, if the sale was in response to the Bud Light controversy last year, it might have had an appearance of bias problem when it comes to future court cases related to trans rights. So it's not about beer. It is about the future of transgender Americans and whether or not the Supreme Court could undo what little protections there are in this country for trans Americans and for the LGBTQ plus community as a whole. Could it be any more clear that Alito is an activist judge? I don't think so. And what sucks is that he's one of the ones that are making sure that the immunity question isn't answered before the election. And that has to do with, of course, Donald Trump. Is Donald Trump immune from any prosecution because he was a president? Does he have presidential immunity? So while the court seems to be taking their time and dragging their feet on this one, and hearing that case, you have two of Trump's criminal cases that hinge on this. That means they will not be heard in court before the election. That means they will likely never be heard if Trump wins. And I think that's the whole point. This is just part of a pattern of behavior by Republican justices that are activist judges. Remember how they screamed about that during the Obama administration? Activist judges! Well, now you have very clear activist judges here that are absolutely engaged in politics, sending out signals, okay, whether it's Stop the Steal or supporting, anti-trans beer boycotts. I think it's very clear that their supposed code of ethics, even the new one, is not going to do a damn thing to rein in these activist judges.